Right. If I stand right here on a sunny day, I'm going to start getting bees flying right here saying, hey, why can't I get to my hive?
If you wave your high tool like that at them, they'll come at you just then too.
Yeah. So before you even start, get behind the hive. And even whenever you open up the lid, what looks better, just in logic? Opening up to the groin or away from your body? Obviously that one. So you open up away from the hive.
What are the numbers on those frames for?
You smoke the entrance, smoke the top. Well,
Let me go get your Brillo.
the numbers on these frames probably represent either it could depend, either the year that they're put in.
You notice Bobby picked up that he was dropping
Yeah.
pellets in there and says, I'll go get you a Brillo pad.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
A lot of times people put numbers on their frames so that they know when to rotate out for the American foul brood, or it could be the
They were
yard,
produced.
could be the year. All right, so this is the beekeeper. This is the year.
Those are the year you put those in, 2012?
Those are the years I wouldn't put them in, but the other bees didn't like them, so they ended up putting them in this one this year. So they're
Okay.
they're 2022 right now, but they already got 21 on, so I'll leave it.
Oh, I thought it was 12.
Oh no.
All right, so whenever you're working a hive, you start from the outside in. It's not really that important when it's a honey super with a queen excluder, but it's a lot more important whenever you get down to that brood. So right now this is a new box, so they're not doing a whole lot, but bees on a frame is a good thing because the bees aren't going to be on a frame for no reason. So hopefully these bees are trying to get those carbohydrates up to make some wax and build some wax so we can store some honey.
Where did they get the wax from?
Well, good question. They get the wax from a gland on their abdomen. It takes a ton of energy to make those, and it's normally adolescent age bees that make that. All right, so the next thing we want to talk about, I have my teaching notes here. Whenever you open a hive, you're going into the hive with 5 reasons. The first one you want to look for is how's the bee cluster, because without bees you don't have much of a colony. The next one you want to look for brood, eggs, larva, cat brood, making sure that those baby bees are making it to the next stages of life till adulthood. The third thing you're looking for is diseases and viruses. And the best thing I can tell you is know what normal looks like. Everyone wants to know what diseases, what a certain virus, what this specific thing looks like. The best thing you can do is know what normal looks like. And normal is very clean, white colors in the larva and the eggs. You want to see them floating in royal jelly. You want to see very solid brown cat brood, or it could be white if it's brand new wax. Sometimes it could be whitish yellow, but know what healthy looks like before you start looking into understanding what unhealthy is. So the fourth thing you want to look for is how they're storing their food, from bee bread and nectar for honey. And then 5 is preparation. What do I need to prepare for? Or in some cases, how can I get these bees to start growing? Because if bees aren't growing, they're dying.
So what's a virus look like?
Well, hopefully we might see one or two.
We'll see a virus?
Well, see signs of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Symptoms.
How about this? Virus.
So, see, I'm taking my hive tool in, working this outside frame out. So,
Why do they put that
we-
comb in between the frames?
well, that's another good question. They put those comb in between these frames to create bridges in the gap so that they can crawl through onto the next frame. So this hive, this colony, this is the hive, the bees are the colony, create a superorganism. And you have 3 castes within this superorganism that we talked about earlier. You have the worker, the queen, and the drone. Do you guys remember which ones are which? So we see all these bees here. What are these? Workers, yep. So these are female, and the queen is a female as well. What makes that fertile egg go from a worker into a queen?
The amount of royal jelly they feed it.
Well, yeah, it hatches out, but yes, it's that diet.
Does it hatch or does it just like dissolve?
Well, they chew out, yeah. So all of these workers could have been a queen if they were fed more royal jelly versus the bee bread. But it's the cell they're in and the position of that cell that tells those workers, we need to pump this full of royal jelly and get it to be a queen. And so we'll get into that once we pull out one of these frames.
Where's royal jelly?
Royal jelly comes from a gland from the back of their neck, and also it comes from nectar and little bits of pollen that they add to it. It's the perfect food. It's 66% liquid, 15% carbohydrates, 13% minor nutrients, and the rest is pollen.
You should be a PhD student.
No, actually, you don't want to do that.
And why are they being nice to you when they be tearing me up?
Well, I'm using very, very, very liberal on the smoke on this very cloudy day. And bees are reactants. So if you are giving off certain very loud emotions, like whether it be happy, well, no, like what I mean is like very strong emotions. Even if you're like super excited and you're just all over the place, or maybe you're super upset about something, bees react to things. They're defensive, they're not aggressive. So if you're giving off certain pheromones, they will react to those pheromones that you're giving off, or even sweating. They don't differentiate the sweat between me and a bear. They just know that I smell bad, and that smells like an animal. So now we're getting in to see some honey and brood, and we see a drone here. So the drone, he is, where'd he go?
What do they taste like, David?
I'm not going to say.
Whenever I was little, I used to go to Granddaddy's operation with my dad, and whenever Uncle Larry or Ryan or Granddaddy were selling some nooks to someone, I would say, hey, if you give me $20, I'll put the biggest bee in my mouth. And that wasn't very nice of me. But yeah, so drones don't have stingers, so that's why we could do that.
But they got other stuff they can leave in your mouth.
Yep.
It gives you a...
Yep, they could poop and stuff. So these workers right here perform what Caitlin was talking about, and I always say it wrong. I say it in a religious way, the temporal polytheism. Polytheism. So that during their life cycle, they go through different jobs based off of their age instinctually. So the main points that you can talk on are like the nurse bees. They go around and feeding all the baby bees, and then they care to the queen, and the queen's quartered and I always say this word wrong too, it's not retina, but the retinue. And so then they become undertaker bees, which are, they clean out dead bodies, big debris, and then they become guard dog bees that protect the entrance or any openings, and they're the ones that will probably sting you first whenever you open up a hive. But the last job that they do is the most dangerous job, because they're introduced to pesticides, predators, anything and everything that would want to kill them, they're introduced to at this last stage, and that's foraging.
Look,
Yeah.
what is that called?
What's this right here? Well,
Y'all
this
excite that poor girl.
is
That's called an endophallus.
endophallus.
Why'd you put him back in there? Damn poor
So
bees.
for the rest of you, drones have the reproductive organs inside their body, but you can squeeze them and they pop them out the other way.
Yep.
That was his endophallus.
So what age is a drone mature enough to mate?
It's 10 days, right?
After when though?
after hatching. Right.
Yeah.
So
10 to 12.
it takes 21 days from
Right, so
egg
24
to adult
they
for a
say.
worker, 16 days from egg to a queen, and then 24 days for a drone from egg to adulthood. Why do you think it takes so fast for a queen to develop, much faster? I mean, 16 days is a lot quicker than 21 to 24. Yes, that royal jelly helps her develop faster.
They don't want to be without a queen.
No.
They don't want to be without a queen. It also allows to the time that there would be less broodlessness in the hive so that they can fill that gap.
So when beekeepers are saying it's a 6-week process of requeening, that's a little confusing at times, but that is from the point of queen cell hatching plus whenever you get the new brood cycling. So it also takes in consideration that brood break. So that's another 21 days.
So
And then
everything
another
you
10
do
days of
today
mating.
directly relates to 42 days after you've done it.
Yep.
So if you feed them sugar water today, it's affecting the bee that would be 42 days later on.
Yep.
Because of the way it works in life cycle and everything. So you're always planning 6 weeks out.
So I can't see.
Is that a
this,
special mouthwash you used?
No. So in the center here we got eggs, about the size, half the size of a grain of rice. Then they mature into like those little worms, the larva. Then they stand up to pupa. Capped brood is the cap pupa, and it comes out into one of these baby bees, which this one's a baby bee because she's all fuzzy and soft. And then one of these workers that is balding is the foragers. So it's all about technique. You don't want to be rough with them, but you come up behind them and you take the back of their wings. The best way to practice is to practice on workers because they'll tell you if you're doing it wrong or not.
And why aren't all
We
those
pass the
bees
frame.
that are on that frame flying around, going around, just going crazy?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that
Why
question?
aren't the bees on that frame just flying off, going around crazy?
Well, they got to keep that brood warm.
There's some other reasons.
They,
too. You named off a little bit of it.
They got to keep the food warm. They got to feed the babies.
Your foragers are out already,
Yep.
so your young bees are on there.
Right,
They're less likely to fly.
right. And the next thing I want to talk about is superorganism reproduction. So when a superorganism comes together, it's a lot of these individuals coming together for one goal. What is the goal of this colony, do you think? Is it to make honey? It's reproduction. So there's 2 ways that this colony can reproduce. She can send her drones out to mate with other queens, but the main part of how this superorganism reproduces is to make another successful queen, and they make 2 colonies. So we're working in.
You can have more than one colony in a hive.
No. Well, you could have a divider, but a lot of times those dividers, there's just too close, too much communication, and normally there's only one queen amongst those hives in that box. But
The hive is a container like your house.
But there are some cases, like in the summertime, when queens will start to die from overheat and exhaustion. It happens quite often that you'll see 2 queens. The mother queen, she'll be over here to the edge on 1 or 2 frames, and the young queen is laying on the other 8. All right, let's see what next talking about. So, talking about working the hive, looking at normal. Hopefully we'll see some signs of mites that I can show you. But so here we see a bunch of larvae.
Your smell is
There's a bunch of good larvae, wet, white. plump. That's what you want to see.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I've known that he dropped it to the phone.
Yeah.
Big track.
There.
So you can see him right
So these are doing pretty good for how.
So show me again what you were looking at.
So this is the larva. They're little white worms.
I did pop it inside.
Okay.
So if you could see them differently in other hives. So what you do not want to see, you want to see this where they're wet and white and they fill the cell really well. But sometimes in the summertime you'll see some backyard hives
So that's what he's
and
talking
the
about. red
larva
and white.
is small. There's a lot of space in there. It's dry. That means you want to start feeding your substitute feeds like sugar water and bee bread. So now we continue to work into the hive.
They're fairly strong. You saw that? Flap your arm or something?
So this is a pretty good example of
I don't see any eggs.
relatively solid. It's not perfect, but it's better than the other frames where there's less of those empty cells. You want to see consistency in age. Sir?
Eggs back in the 80s.
Yeah, you want to see eggs back in the empties. I'm not seeing any eggs in these. But yeah, you want to see as they hatch out that she's laying back in them. So bees communicate in different ways. They communicate via pheromones, and then they also communicate via waggle dance. Let's see, I just saw one doing it.
Yeah, it is.
Waggle dance. Yeah.
It's a dance where they go in a figure eight using their hive entrance with the sun, almost like telling them like 3 o'clock, like the clock position, and that's how they can let other bees know where to go with their species. Or when they swarm, some bees will be scouting new places, new homes, and so they'll use a waggle dance to all see on the same page with them.
And the more vigorous it is, the closer it is. But the more of those shakes spread out, the more farther out.
Now, if they send out a swarm that goes over the ocean, why would that ever occur? Oh yeah, we were 14 miles out.
Waggle dancing?
No, they weren't waggle dancing. We
14
were with the
miles.
Oh, they're
USDA.
oriented.
No, they went 14 miles out. We were fishing on a charter boat, and they landed on the front of the boat. We had Frank
So we
Ison,
saw a bunch of
all of us.
worker brood. This is what drone brood looks like, where it's much larger cells. You don't want the bees to be doing this on the frame. You want them to be doing it how they're doing it down here, where it's on the bottom part.
Why not in the center?
Because it
Because it's
just,
taking over?
right,
And to get a properly developed drone, that cell needs to be bigger.
So in the middle of it, it's not big.
you want the consistency of workers and the extra, that bird comb to be the drones.
Okay. So the queen will actually, before she lays her eggs, will go in and use her antenna to measure how large that cell is. Then she'll decide. Yep, they do. So then they'll decide then whether to lay an unfertilized or fertilized egg based on the size.
If they have enough sperm.
Incredible.
So if she measures wrong and she lays a unfertilized egg in there, you can tell that she's about to the end of her antennae.
So this isn't a good example of a solid pattern, but now we're starting to see quite a bit of pollen. Let's see, there's a couple of cells of bee bread, and the way you can tell the difference is that pollen is still very grainy looking, and the bee bread is glossy and shiny. Let's see. Well,
We just got stung.
well, no, they're just telling me they didn't like that. I was hoping I got stung so I could show you. I'll get stung.
Have that.
I need to get stung.
We're about.
On the knee.
No.
But you can see all the different colors of the different pollens they're bringing in.
And a little bit
And
of
then-
nectar just rained up too.
This glossy cell is what bee bread looks like. This is what the workers are fed.
The one that you promised?
So yes, ma'am. So after 3 days, the workers and the drones are cut off from royal jelly and fed this bee bread. And in Europe, they call it bee milk because I guess they found some lactose in it. At least that's what Brahm says. So you could stack the frames gently like this, but it's always best to try to not squish bees. And always.
How are you keeping straight where they go back in, or you don't care? Or?
Well,
I thought that was.
That's why I went this way.
Okay.
And so, yeah, you do want to at least put the brood frames back in the center, and the food frames outside of the main cluster there in the center. And if they do not have it that way, then you can rearrange it appropriately. But having like frame 3 and frame 5 with both brood on it misplaced is not going to make a big deal. It's still going to take 3 days for that cluster to come back and start working again after inspection. So this is some more cat brood, some bee bread. Got some eggs.
I'll take 2 over easy.
Got grits.
This hive is.
Bobby, that's got nectar in
So this is what foragers. This is a good example of an old bee. She's lost all of her hair, starting to lose the colors.
This is white disease.
Yep.
You see this little
But so far, I haven't seen a mite on a bee. Is that a good way to tell if I have mites?
Yes. 100% accurate.
Where are mites at in the hive?
They might be somewhere in the brood.
Yep. That's where they mate.
What's the percentage of mites in the brood compared to the ones spreading? Bobby, you're dripping all the nectar out.
70?
Okay.
It's roughly 80-20. But it varies through the spring to winter time.
70 is the number one.